Peace and grand rising to the Moors. Today is October 28th, 2020 on the Gregorian calendar, 1441 on the moon calendar, and 1440 on the sun calendar. And we're talking about interruptions of our connection to the ancestral and Akashic records. And contained within those records is everything from all land, all natural resources, and all commerce. Everything that has to do with that. And the answers to it and how we're to do it is contained in the Akashic records and in the energy, and that energy was interrupted for us, or we allowed it to be interrupted. And when the energy, when we lost the connection or gave away the connection to our ancestral energies, it cut all of that off for us. Everything, all the resources, because we, Morris say a lot of times, we're the heir to everything. Why are we suffering? It's because we consented to those ancestral energies being cut off, and we consented to taking up with, to amalgamation, and when we consent to corporate amalgamation, all they did was smile and take that estate, or appear to take it. All they did was smile and enjoy it and invite us in, and we went in, and the energy, our connection to our ancestral Akashic records was broken by consent, by our own consent. So our job now is to renew and continue to renew, because we've renewed it already, all of us have, or we wouldn't be here. We've renewed our connection to our ancestral Akashic records and our ancestral, that is within us, and it manifests outwardly. So when we continue to make that connection, and there are ways to make the connection, to continue to make the connection, and we'll discuss those ways, and you all know the ways already. We just have to discuss the ways that our energy, our Akashic record energy is accessed, and also discuss ways that it's interrupted, so that we will recognize the interruption and then be able to neutralize that interruption. And when we neutralize the interruption and reconnect, the answers come to all of our situations and circumstances that we find ourselves in, where the corporate is concerned. And even with regards to one another, it has become really clear to me lately that interruptions in Akashic energies and ancestral energies is a deliberate thing by some, because they see us reconnecting. For example, when our calls are interrupted, and that might be the interruption right here, maybe. But when our calls are there's an attempt to interrupt the call, then that's an attempt to cut off our connection to one another, because we connect with one another energetically on the call. And it's also an attempt to disconnect us from our ancestral energies that flow from one to the other, as we share information and connect with one another. And we have to recognize that, put it in its place, and then keep moving, and know it when we see it, and be able to get right on past it, right past the interruption, and continue connecting. I was discussing this just yesterday, and Oh, there's one right there. Someone signed in as they're signed in as me, but that's not me because I don't use capital letters, so that's how you know that's not me. Do you see that? Some of you may have seen that or not, but that is an energy interrupter attempting to interrupt the meeting. Let me lock it up. And so he signed in as me. And he's sitting there waiting for his opportunity to disrupt and interrupt the energy. And we're not going to give them that opportunity. But again, we have gotten to the point now in our nation where that's really the only thing they have left as we continue to escape captivity. That's the only thing they have left now is to just do things to seemingly interrupt the energy. When they did things publicly like taking in for sharing publicly, that could have been done at her domicile, or it could have been done on the way to the meeting, but they waited until cameras were rolling and all of that because they know we publish our meetings, and they did it that way because they are seeking to interrupt the energy, and they know that some will be their energy will be interrupted, and they'll never recover from that. Some will never recover from that, from seeing that. We cannot allow that to be the case. Some will miss information that they need to free themselves by allowing those energy interrupters to appear on the calls and interrupt their connection to the calls and to us, because even those, and I hear it all the time, those who listen to the calls after the call is over are connecting. The same energy and love and truth and peace and freedom and justice that comes through the calls, it happens when they're listening to the calls, because they hear us talking back and forth with one another. And they see the grand rising, and they see the energies connecting. And we have to be able to recognize the energy interrupters. Sometimes, and I've had this happen several times, sometimes we'll be in a conference conversation situation where there's, a lot of, it can be, Moors or people who don't know that they're Moors. And we'll start to connect. Let's just say you and I are having a conversation in this setting where there's more than just us. And we're connecting, and people can feel the connection and they can see the connection. And then there'll be an energy interrupter. Now, energy interrupters have their place. It's not a bad thing. There are ways that energy can be interrupted. That's a good thing for us. And we'll discuss that too. But where we're concerned, we want to identify the energy interrupters that distract. And so we'll be talking back and forth with one another. And then when there's a break in the conversation where we're allowing the energies to flow, they used to call it a pregnant pause. It's a pregnant pause because seeds are being planted between us, Moors. And as those seeds are being planted, some want to interrupt the growth and birthing process, the incubation process, all the way up until the idea bursts and manifests in the physical. And so they will do some public service announcement in the middle of the, while we're silent and allowing the energies to flow back and forth, they will interrupt and say, something completely off, you know. And some do it inadvertently, and some do it purposefully, so that that energy and connection is interrupted. Some are uncomfortable with the connection because they've not felt it and not had it and don't know how to respond to it. So these things are not necessarily mischievous or deliberate. It's not necessarily a deliberate interruption. And that's why we have to talk about it and point it out, those things that are hidden. We want to reveal them so that we recognize them and we know how to put them in their place. In the thing that has caused us to be so unified, and I'll put in that means in energy and everything else, but it happens in energy first, is that we've interrupted corporate energy. We've completely interrupted the corporate process. Liens, affidavits, writs, demonstrations, court actions, and this that is following the court actions, which is the enforcement, and it's not enforcement. Well, it is enforcement when you spell enforcement the way we spell it. Enforcement for us means that which comes from within and causes change to happen. We are change enforcers. We make change happen, all of us, as through our demonstrations. And we've interrupted that corporate process completely to the point where it will never recover, ever. And that's something I never thought I would see. I did not know we Moors had that much authority on our land. I didn't know that, but we know now. And so they can attribute that to whatever they want to attribute it to. Corporates can attribute that to whatever. But we know that we have reconnected with our ancestral energies. And when we reconnect with our ancestral energies, even the financial condition of the earth changes and begins to be in our favor, and then the earth begins to prosper. And that's what we're seeing now, is the beginnings of that. On other lands, they already know and felt and saw the energy change. And they're doing things on other lands, which are still our land. They're just separated by a little bit of water. And water, in that case, where oceans and things are concerned, is a bit of an energy interrupter. You know, when we honor the water, we're not saying it's a bad element. We love water. But just imagine if it was all land between us and China territory and us and Russia territory, which it is. And it is that way really underneath the water. But then we would have never lost our energetic connection, because they would have reminded us and we would have reminded one another. So the energy interrupters they serve a great purpose, because we've done it. That's how we got where we are now, where we're able to demonstrate without fear. Energy interrupters have a place. We're all energy interrupters when we demonstrate. That means we're cutting that corporate energy down to nothing. But we have to also recognize when that's being done to the antithesis of what we're doing and put it in its place, know how to put it in its, recognize it. Recognizing it is the main way to put it in its place, is to know it when you see it. That's what the interruptions and the calls were all about, is how easily are you knocked off your square? And you can go back and listen to some of the calls. At first, I didn't realize that that was what that was. And I was thinking, them damn colonizers, you know, that's what I was thinking. But really, it's just a test to keep us on our square when energy is interrupted or changed. So I'm not, and we are not nearly as bothered by that as we were before, because it's not interrupting our energies anymore. We just keep on going. We put them out and we keep on going. We put them out and we keep on going. We lock the meeting and we keep on going. And as you can see on this call right here, they came in. Now, one thing they have to do is they can't come in all lowercase letters. You know that. So he came in as light Tajiri Bay in using, capitalizing the first letter. But that's not who I am. They know that. So he came in crooked and sat there quietly listening, looking for a moment to interrupt the energy. He was waiting for the energy to get to where it is right now. And when the energies get to where it is right now, where we're connecting energetically, because we connect energetically without even speaking. Not to mention when we speak. And in many cases, and eventually, we're going to get to the point where we don't even have to say words. We just energetically know. That's where we're going spiritually, in the spirit realm. Is this dimension is going to go higher, and we'll all be thinking the same thing, the one mind at the same time, and we will know. All we'll have to do is just feel each other. Some of us can do that now, even from a distance. There's some things going on sometimes, depending on the connection to someone, like for many of us, there's some in our kinship line that we just know something's not right because we can feel it. So we pick up the phone and we call them, and sure enough, you know. And then by the time they finish talking to us, and we have that energy exchange, then everything is okay. And our energies get back to a place of homeostasis and comfort and healthy energy. And their energies feel better about what they're going through. And just by that exchange of energy, the problem is not a problem anymore. So what does that have to do with banking and commerce and land and resources and all of that? It has everything to do with it, because when we were connected previously before the fall, when we were connected ancestrally to the Akashic records and all that we're connected to, we could hear from the ancestors on what to do next and how to do things. And that's how we moved. We didn't need Yale or Harvard or Princeton to tell us anything. And they haven't really told us anything either to this day. You know, we didn't need them to tell us anything. We got the information the way the ancestors meant for us to get it. And so that transfers even over into our research about all that we're doing. When we clear our energies and regain that connection or maintain it rather, because we have it and it's not going anywhere. That connection, that ancestral connection is here to stay. All we have to do is just, they used to say, tap into it. And when there is an interruption or a seeming interruption, we have to know what to do to get past that interruption as quickly as possible so that we can continue to hear. Some of the interruptions, some of the things that interrupt our energy are things, the greatest interrupter of our energies is fear. And I can't say greatest because I don't want to give it that much credit, but that's been the case previously. We wouldn't be here if we hadn't gotten over that fear. Even if it's just fear to where we would not state that we are who we are in a given situation. Fear has been previously, and I'm going to speak about it in the past because it's a spell, has been previously the biggest interrupter of our energies and connections, both with one another and with the great within and the great mind that is everywhere. So another interrupter is when we're having conversations with one another and you can feel the conversation start to escalate as if it's going to go into an argument, because there's a difference between healthy debate and an outright argument. You can feel the energy before it even gets there. Failure to interrupt that energy with some peace and some love and some truth and some justice all at once. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice all at once. Failure to interrupt that, when you feel that energy and you feel the escalation starting to happen between you and your brothers and sisters, or us and our brothers and sisters, because I'm going to speak of it in terms of us all, because we're all growing at the same time. Failure to interrupt the energy with some love and some truth and some peace and some freedom and some justice that's what causes the interruption to happen, where our connection is affected. Our Akashic record connection is affected. And then we can't reach resolution or solution. That's where solutions stop when we fail to do that. When we fail to interrupt negative energies or energies that are not productive, our own energy and the ability to come to solution is interrupted. And we don't need that. We don't want that. No one wants to get close to an answer and a solution and not be able to reach that solution because of failure on our part to interrupt the negative energy. It's like when you pick up the phone and you call someone in your kinship line, and that one in your kinship line, you all have argued in the past, and you want to resolve the argument. Whatever the issue is, you want to resolve it, and you pick up the phone to call them, and you start out good, everything is good, you're speaking from a place of truth and love, and then you can feel the energy start to rise. It is a gift of ours, all of ours. We have the special gift and ability to stop the energy peacefully, that energy that's seeking to interrupt the connection that we have with one another. because it's a bloodline and birthright connection. It's ancient. It's not going anywhere. And if we fail to interrupt the energy that way, then our Akashic, ancient, ancestral energy remains interrupted seemingly. So that's an art. It is a craft. It's a gift. And those who know how to do it on both sides will never, ever, ever be at a loss or lacking anything. On both sides. We have to know how to interrupt energies that are not proper, and proper is not even, that's not the word I'm looking for. We want to interrupt energies that are not healthy for our nation, that are not going to encourage growth in our nation. We want to be able to interrupt those even one-on-one, not to mention nationally, internationally, universally. And then we also want to be able to know when there's attempts to interrupt ours, and then stop the attempt by remaining connected. Some of the other energy interrupters throughout the day, things that I call them, when they talk about disturbing the peace. You can wake up, and when we wake up, we meditate, and the first thing we do is reach within and pull out that ancient ancestral connection. And when we do that, it can be interrupted by things like alarm clocks. And I'm not saying alarm clocks are bad. They're good and needed and necessary for most of us. Some don't need it. Some have it, some have alarm clocks naturally. But for others, it interrupts energies. Things like, again, like fear, it's an energy interrupter. Phone calls, people who are constantly looking at their phone and watching the phone and all of that all day, it can interrupt energies. And I'm not saying these are bad things, because again, there's a place for that. There's a place for it. But we cannot allow it to disconnect us from that ancient ancestral energy, because the energy that we have within us is used to connect us to each other. And once we connect first to the all, it's going to bring us together further. And then as we continue to unify, we will be able to see energy interrupters and know whether they are interrupting good energy or interrupting bad energy. They look similar, but one is an imitation interrupter, and the other is the real one. We are the real energy interrupters. Again, we interrupted the corporate. That corporate energy, and I don't think there's anyone on this call who will disagree, that corporate energy, we didn't think that we could interrupt it because it appeared to be so huge. I talk about it every now and then with regard to the fake courts and the fake policy enforcers and all of that, and how when I first woke up, that was the first thing I looked at and said, ancestors, how do we get rid of that big, hairy looking thing? Because it looked huge and insurmountable. That's what it looked like. And all we had to do was tell it that we don't need it anymore because we are the law and we are the government. We're the court. We are the law. So, you know, we're getting our vanguard, the Morse vanguard is coming together. And when we are the vanguard, that other thing, the fake can't be here. When the real is here, the fake has no leg to stand on. It was a paper tiger in the first place. Didn't seem like it. I've been handled by them fraudulently. We all have. Because we were not who they said we were when they put hands on us. But now that our own, the real law is here, you know how they say there's a new sheriff in town. That energy has been interrupted. And now there's, you know, defund and all this and that and this and that. And they're looking for a way to get out the door because the heirs are here. The real has shown up. We've interrupted the energy. And for that, I'm very grateful. And that's on in all areas. Every area has been interrupted. Talking about a gold standard and implementing
And it's
that.
time to interrupt you with their phone.
And implementing, and also implementing, not just the gold standard, but shortly after that, we placed an instrument on the public record, 656 trillion. That began interrupting some other things, and then you could see things starting to break down. And now we're here, where we are today. And again, I put something in the chat, an article in the chat of, you know, proof that some things have been interrupted where finance even is concerned. And not just interrupted, but shut down. So we just have to determine, and then we have to become better and better at identifying energy interrupters. And we have to become better and better at interrupting energies that are not, you know, in corporate energy. Let me put it that way, because that's where, you know, that's what we are dealing with. We're dealing with, you know, on a massive scale that has gotten sick and ill with COVID. That corporate energy is not doing well. It's on the, it's in a casket right about now. And those who are, and we were talking about this before the call started, those who are willing to do the work and be patient, we first had to interrupt that corporate energy. And some are wanting the whole estate before we competently do away with the corporate energy. And as soon as they do one demonstration, they want the whole estate brought forward and placed in their lap. But that's not competent, because the corporate energy and us can't be here. Those two don't, light and dark, no. Those two don't mix. Even according to Unum Sanctum, there can't be two heads. There can only be one head. So we had to deal with that one that was attempting or pretending and appearing to be the American, the head, the sovereign. We had to deal with that. And we're still continuing. We're going to keep cutting surgically, cutting away, doing away with, neutralizing, getting rid of, moving out, clearing all of that off of our land. We're not going to stop. We're going to keep going. And even with regard to, I guess the art of, they call it the art of war, we call it the art of peace. Knowing when you see some energies that are attempting to manifest, knowing how to neutralize them. And neutralization happens first in our minds, and then it manifests outwardly. You know when an energy is not productive because it is the precursor to it. That means the curse before is the fear. You'll feel fear right before that energy manifests or attempts to manifest. And you can neutralize it at the feeling. When you feel that fear, some call it cognitive dissonance, right before a thought. And then the thought becomes, we start looking around outwardly for the manifestation of that fearful thing. Are there any questions or comments about that? Okay, hang on for just 1 second. Okay.
Islam. Hey, on Valerie Harper Bay, you know who I'm talking about? I can't get her name right now. I forget her name. Valahara Bay.
Oh, Queen Valahara.
Yeah. Even on her videos, the Albions are now putting commercials up there. So that's just commenting on the interruption. So I just want to mention that, you know, now and it's truly an interruption because her videos are kind of, because there's a lot of communication in it, so a lot of echoing, and sometimes you can't hear the questions that are being asked and things of that nature. But they're managing to put their commercials up there to make it more of disruption. Islam.
Yes. So it's good that you see that, because when the interruption happens, if we determine to stay connected to the energy, whatever energy is being put out there, all we have to do is maintain the connection while the commercial or whatever is going on, and once we skip past that commercial, and now they're making it so that you can't even skip past them. But if you're able to maintain the energetic connection, and it's going to take practice. It takes practice. I mean, we're all practicing that even now. When that happens and the energy is disrupted, if you're able to quickly get back into the flow, and that's something that we control. We control the ability to connect and stay connected. We control that ability. I just did it a couple of seconds ago when they start talking, when the fakes start talking, because see, now they're using new different names and all of that. When they start talking, he was sitting. Yes, Justice Amos, you hit the nail on the head there. But the fakes, they were sitting in the meeting quietly and waiting for a moment to interrupt because they know we keep hitting the target. And every time they see us going for that target, they want to get in the way and make it so that we don't hit that truth center. But even on the videos and things, just as I almost put in the chat, mute the volume. I do that too. That's actually that's a great way to stay connected energetically. When you're listening to videos and doing your studies, silence is key. That's the thing. It's funny you should say that too, Justice Amos, to mute the volume when you're watching, so that your spirit stays connected. Because if you think about that on a much bigger scale, when we were asleep and we were dealing with corporates, whenever we said anything or sent anything to them, they would come back with something. They always came back with something. They would send a letter or something, or call or something. But when we woke up and got competent and started speaking in our sovereign authority, now all of a sudden we don't hear back from them. They're mute, they're quiet. And for some of us, that was a bit of a surprise. It was a shock. We were expecting them to kick and scream and do all types of madness. But we got no response at all. And some thought that was a bad thing because we got used to them talking back and calling and ringing the phone and ringing the phone and ringing the phone. We got used to that. Some of us wouldn't even go out to the mailbox but once every blue moon. We didn't want to go to the mailbox because they were so busy talking back. That's how you know that we've accomplished what we set out to accomplish. Because they're not talking. And now today, I'm not afraid to go out to the mailbox. Because I already know that if there's anything in it, that's corporate. I know what to do. Lien, court action, command stating that you don't own the resource you're trying to manage or govern. You don't own it. We do. Your services are no longer needed. That's an energy interruption. Our actions, and see, sometimes people think that, well, we're doing all these court actions and stuff, they never show up. We've interrupted the energy. They're not going to show up. We interrupted their energy. The interruption happened on both sides. The interruption is, we know we don't have to go to theirs because we're doing court actions on them. That's a switch. And something I never, when I was asleep, I would have never imagined that how that's done. And guess what they put in the way to further feed the fallacy and the lie that they are the judges? They put 8 and 10 and 12 years of quote unquote law school in the way so that we thought we would never catch up without jumping through their hoops. And then the wake up happened. And we interrupted that energy like a samurai warrior. And that's the real issue right there. It's interruption of the energy by our activity, by our action. The court actions have made it so that, and I'm just going to speak from my own personal, it has made it so that I already know that no matter what we do, we don't have to appear in their court. Now, we're going to always remain lawful, always. That's how we stay out of there, is we remain lawful and peaceful. And as long as we do that, we never, ever. And that was bye-bye to the big hairy beast that I mentioned earlier. And we just have to continue doing what we're doing. That one thing alone of not having to go to those fake courts and not having to answer to fake policy enforcers, that one thing alone is enough for me to carry me for the next 1,000 years. That alone. That we're not subject to anyone. But we had to interrupt the energy first, and some were not willing to do the court actions because they felt like they need to show up. They don't need to show up. It's an energy. The fact that they're on our land or were on our land, and they weren't even on our land, they were on paper. That's the real deal. They only existed on paper in the first place. All it takes is some paper to get rid of them. Some paper and some spells. Because that's all they did was cast spells. Through the TV and the news, etc. That's all they did. That's how they existed, only in our minds. And then we would see a few colonizers on the land, and then they, a few policy enforcers, and they were doing whatever they did. Well, we're the police. We're the wazirs. We're the muftis. We're the military. We're the provost marshal. We're all of that. We're the postmaster. We're all of that. So now we go from there. We don't need them. We interrupted the energy, and when you interrupt the energy and you're as powerful as we are, they have to take a seat. They were sitting in the first place. That's why they call it sitting on the bench. We stand. Interrupting the energy. And then not allowing our energy to be interrupted. And you can feel when there's an attempt to interrupt the energy, our energy, we can feel that. Just like when you're asleep and an alarm clock goes off and you're in a deep sleep, you actually have to regain your bearings when you wake up. Now, it's the same bed you've been sleeping in the whole time, but you will forget where you are when your sleep energy is interrupted by an alarm clock. And again, some people need that in order to get where they're going. Some people need that, but I'm just pointing to things that interrupt energies and what it feels like. Being able to identify when there's an attempt to interrupt the energy. Even in conversations, and this is actually the most important thing, in conversations that we're having with one another, where we're connecting. Let's just be able to recognize when our energies when there's an attempt to interrupt the connection. That's the point of all of this, is identify And you can feel it coming long before it actually manifests. You can feel it. There's something on the inside of us when things are starting to escalate towards an argument, or when things are starting to escalate towards whatever, some fear being manifest. Because sometimes we can be talking to one another, and if you're talking about a demonstration, and someone will say something about, well, you know, what if the policy enforcers show up? Well, they just cast a spell into the conversation and some energy into the conversation and some fear into the conversation that interrupts sovereign energy, seemingly, for some, until we get accustomed to dealing with that thought, the thoughts and the feelings that come with that statement. So I just said that statement, and even on the inside of me, I felt a little bit of fear. But because I recognize the fear, I know how to speak to it. We're the policy enforcers. And they don't have a court that they can take us to because we're the court. And they don't have the status to even approach us. And there's not going to be any war on the land. We're standing and we're saying clearly who we are. And not just saying it, we're demonstrating it. We've interrupted all corporate energy. All of it. And everything they did had a price tag, a fiat tag attached to it. We've interrupted all of that. I was talking with someone yesterday who has a significant amount of experience in that system, the fake policy enforcer system. And they were saying about how when they would have their trainings and they were coming up with different codes and statutes, that with every code and statute, they would attach a number to it. There was always a number attached to whatever it is that they were attempting to do. And with that number, when they distribute that number out to the different other corporations, there is a fee attached to that number. So they spoke by numbers too. Anything that they attempted to do. There were numbers, fiat attached to it. Fiat is energy. We have to interrupt that energy. We've done that, and we're going to continue to do it. Interruptions of energy on our part means that we stop corporate energy from manifesting on our land. That's an ongoing process. It's ongoing. It's something we have to do all day, every day. Is continue to move in that direction. Continue to meet those goals every day. As often as you can, do that in remembrance of our ancestors. Sounds a little bit like what came from the bibliophilio text. As often as we can. Don't use fiat. Use sovereign credit. And do everything yourself. Whatever you need to have done, either do it yourself or have another Moor do it. That's interrupting the corporate commercial energy. And now that we've stopped that and shut it down for the most part. Again, that's why it's ongoing, because we have to keep doing it. The ancestors are giving us the answers that we need in order to start sovereign commerce. And that's the goal. That's one of the goals. But again, prior to that, we have to deal with the energies and the fear. We have to interrupt that in our own lives. Now we're not worried about any of that other stuff. We're not worried about it because we're already doing it. We're not worried about policy enforcers and all of that. And if anything like that were attempted to manifest, we know what to do. All we do is say there are no United States Corporation Company citizens here. Your services are not needed on our land. That's it. Jurisdiction, again. And we continue to cast the spell and break the spell. Break the spell on our minds and cast it on them. And that is the manifestation of burial. We bury them because they're already dead. And someone said, let the dead bury the dead. We're just going to stay focused on nation building. We put them in their place when they seek to interrupt the energies, and we keep going. We keep going. We keep going. There was a major retrograde that just happened. And that retrograde interrupted the energies for some of us in a major way. And in around right before the retrograde, because the retrograde was on the 13th, Mercury retrograde was on the 13th of October. Retrogrades alone mess with a lot of us. Okay. And I can't say a lot of us, some of us. But then a few days before that, there was an energetic shutdown on the corporate side. That corporate energy shut down. And a lot of us felt that. I felt that one too. Simply because we were so accustomed to that energy being the basis of everything. And because we've come out of that system, when that energy shut down, we felt it. It was something. And then we had to determine to keep our ancestral connection and keep speaking to one another, keep things going while we adjust to this new upshift. Because it's definitely an upshift. It's kind of like when you're driving one of those manual transmission, a stick shift. And before you when you shift to go faster, it seems like there's a pull on it first and then it shoots forward. That's what just happened for our nation and for our government and for us, which is all the same. I'm just saying the same thing. That's a bit redundant to say us, our government, and our nation. It's a bit redundant, but we say it anyway because we like the way it sounds. But that's what just happened. There was a huge, it felt like a pull, and now forward we go. Because we're able to continue to come together even when the energy that we were feeling, and that's why we don't do feelings and beliefs, even when the energy that we were feeling wanted to slow things down. And then it's not a bad thing. The Moors who really are in tune energetically to because of their signs, their astrological signs, and because of the way they're connected energetically, some had to get quiet for a while because it affected them so. And that might have happened for others had we not recognized it for what it was. We recognized that it was an energy interrupter. And our nation cannot be interrupted. Governing does not stop. We keep going. The fakes taught us that. They're running around with COVID and everything else, and they still trying to project that they're governing. Really? But they get it. No stopping, supposedly. The only thing that can stop them is us. So we're learning that we don't stop no matter what. We keep talking to each other. We don't allow the energy to be interrupted between us. And sometimes the technology will be used to interrupt the energy. I know that happened a lot when we first, if you look back at the first and second and third couple of videos that we did, there was a strong technological pull on the energy because it's like bringing a freight train to a halt. That's not something that happens all at once. It happens, you have to slow it down first. And when you look at the first couple of videos, you can barely understand what's being said because the frequencies were not accustomed to hearing that. And the same thing with any of us. The frequencies around us were not accustomed to us standing the way that we stand. And so there was some things that happened, some craziness that happened. Phones not working, computers not working right, kin not, malfunctioning and not relationships going haywire. Things where jobs and domiciles are concerned and conveyances are concerned went haywire, seemingly, when we decided to interrupt that energy that was seeking to continue to control us. And some made it through that. Most of us made it through that. Most of us made it through that. And some are having to take the time to continue to try and make it through that. But we had to interrupt the energy. So that's why it's been such an energetic, for some it's been an energetic, seeming like a fight. It seems like a fight. But it's not a fight. It's not a fight. In reality, it's not a fight. It feels like a fight. And again, that's why we can't do feelings and beliefs. We have to know the laws of energy in order to know that it's not a fight. Energy is a flow. Not a fight, it's a flow. Energy flows. And when you interrupt that flow, and then you change it back and make it go in the other direction, which is changing that debtor energy into creditor energy, then you got a whole new, everything is new. Because now you have to know how to flow in creditor energy, where we've been flowing in debtor energy for a while because we were asleep. And that's why banking is energetic. It's energy first. And scientifically, thoughts are transferred by neurotransmitters and synapses. etc., and chemicals that carry energy. Neurotransmitters, when you start talking about neurotransmitters, you're talking about energy and light touching another energetic conveyance method in our brain and in our consciousness and in our spirit. It's all energy, electrical energy, and it's actually 100% electrical energy, really. Because even our heart cannot. Our heart works better energetically when we drink enough water, for example. Water is a conductor of electricity. So you're still talking about uninterrupted energy flow, because that's what we're talking about, but it's all connected. So even if we want our health to be better, alkaline bodies conduct energy more smoothly, and they have a lot less misfires, energetic misfires. And a misfire is nothing more than an interruption. It's an abrupt interruption. A heart attack is an abrupt interruption. But you get signals beforehand that that is where things are going. You get energetic hints that that's where things are going. And then those energetic hints manifest into the physical. But if we're drinking more water, which conducts electricity, that's why we're 78%. And they say 78%, but I think it's closer to 90% water. Based on what I'm seeing and experiencing. When I first wake up in the morning, and again, this is again energy flow. When I first wake up in the morning, I've gone quite a while without drinking water. And the feeling when I first wake up in the morning is different. And the first thing I have to do is drink a lot of water in the morning if I have not done so throughout the night. And as soon as I drink the water, the thoughts that are circulating around us, the ancestral thoughts that are circulating, the Akashic records, because you know the Akashic records are actually in the air. They're all around us, circulating, looking for a vessel that can conduct the electricity that it takes to think the thought. That's why they call it brain waves and thought waves and thought patterns. And when I drink enough water, which is usually about 30 swallows I do that 2 or 3 times. 2 is usually enough. When I do that, first thing in the morning, the ancestors immediately, it's like they sit down and say, okay, here's some information we want you to either research or we're making you aware of it. It has to be water because of the electricity and the energy flow. The energy dehydration interrupts my energy flow. But see, I realized that because I always wondered, and I asked the ancestors, why did you all stay around water all the time? They had to be around water all the time. For that reason, they knew that when we stay hydrated, yes, in the chat, Empress, currency is the same thing no matter how you look at it. So when people talk about the office of the comptroller of currency, really? That means that whoever that is, or whoever that was attempting to sit in an office that controls a lot of energy. Because they know banking is a spiritual, energetic matter. They know that. That's why they didn't call it the office of the comptroller of money, or the office of the comptroller of dollars, or the office of the comptroller of fiat. They called it what they called it because they know what it really is. And now we know what it really is. And that office is a hypothecation of the controller, the currency controller, which is us. So if you look back at one of the old videos that we did, and it's not that old, the one that we did with the 666 trillion, we say all Moors are currency controllers. All Moors are currency controllers. That means we're controlling everything. All resources come from us. Energy flow and energy interrupters. By our sovereign energy flow, we interrupted the corporate, and we can continue to do that in our lives. We can continue to do that in our lives. All we have to do is be that which has been faked, and we have to be the real manifestation of that fake thing that was pretending to be us. So when we say that policy and forces are fake, we have to show, well, where's the real one? We're it. And then we begin to be that which we say we are, the real one. That's the formula for everything we do. That's the formula for everything we do. Let me show you how. Again, if we say their courts are fake, well, where's the real court? And if the real court doesn't show up, the fakes are going to keep doing what they're doing. Well, boom, we're here. Well, where is, if we say policy enforcers are fake, where are the real police? Where's the real law makers and law givers and law enforcers? Well, we're here. And we're active. And we're active where Moors are concerned in the protection and the assistance of the Moors. Protecting and assisting. That's what law enforcement really is for us in our nation. And that's why we don't need guns. We don't need guns to assist and protect one another. Because when we protect one another, we're protecting from the corporates, but the corporates can't do anything if we're doing it. They can't do anything if we're doing it, so their guns are useless. I'm a living witness to that. Their guns are useless when we're peacefully assisting one another and protecting one another with information and being together and staying unified and speaking with one voice. Our strength is in our numbers. It's not in guns. A hint of that is in the movie Black Panther when the Empress said, guns so primitive. Because she knows. They know. And now we know that when we think above that, we don't have to deal with it. Be above it, and we don't have to deal with it. State court, we're the court. State policy enforcers, nope. We're the real ones. We're the real law enforcement. We're the real police. And for everything we do, if we're there, that means law enforcement is already present. And we don't need the services of state corporate. They're incompetent to even deal with the nobility. And that's on every level. Where schools are concerned, we don't do education. We do irrigation, so we don't need their schools. And when we competently say that and interrupt that corporate energy, because even their schools are money-making issues. And if they don't get a certain amount of money, the schools suffer. Because it's not about the learning and the growth and the health of the children. So we interrupt that energy, begin the irrigation teaching and learning, and the flow of commercial education camps is interrupted. That energy is interrupted. And then not only did we interrupt that energy, but now our energy begins to flow in that area. And the things that we've discussed, we learn from it and we grow from it. And when we stay focused on nation building in that manner, we won't even notice that they slipped out the door and they're no longer here. Interruption of their energy and noticing when our energies, when there's an attempt to interrupt our energies, and then identify it, make note of it, and silence it. When we, and this is how most arguments start. Arguments start either when there is a failure to interrupt energies that are conducive to argument, or when energy is brought in that, let me see. So I want to say this the right way. So the failure to stop negative energies and also the failure to feed positive energies. That's where arguments start. And sometimes when I use the example earlier of speaking with your kin, of picking up the phone to call your kin. And when you pick up the phone to call your kin, it starts out good. There's good energy because you're coming from a place of honor and honesty, and you're saying, look, we really need to work this out because we don't need to be arguing with one another. And that's a vulnerable, seemingly vulnerable place to be. But in reality, you're manifesting honest, honorable energy. It's coming from a real place, a true place of really wanting to connect and come together. And then the failure to continue to speak in that vein, in that flow, if we fail to speak in that flow and continue to stay in that place of honor and honorability, then there's an interruption in even the good energy, and it's on our part that we fail to stay in that place just because they say something that interrupts it. We have to be determined to stay right there in that place of, even though you're saying things that are hurtful, I'm still going to stay in this place of, we're going to get past this. We're going to get past it, and when we get past it, we're going to be stronger. We're going to be more unified. Yes, it interrupted our flow, but we can get past it. We can get over it. Have you ever been in a group of people and you and someone in the group make a really good connection in the group? And then, and it can be a new group that you're in, and where you don't really know everybody, but you're in the group and you start connecting with people. And over time, you make the connections. And the more people in the group you become connected with, your phone starts to ring a little more. And you're like, okay, this is great. You know, everyone's staying in touch. This is good. So then the meetings keep happening, and you're continuing to make the connections, and you and someone in that group become really close, and you're having a great time, and then you're meeting after the meetings, or you're talking on the phone after the meetings, and then someone else in the group will see the connection that you've made with that one. And after the meetings, they'll start calling a little bit more. And you can kind of feel that they're, you know, first in your mind, you're thinking, okay, I don't really have anything as much in common with this one. And we have to get past that too, because that's some colonized thinking. But I don't really have, you know, when they call, they don't really talk about too much. It seems like they're trying to go somewhere with the conversation and direct the energy. It's clear they want to change some of my energy or let me know something. It seems like they want to let me know something, but they haven't gotten to that point yet. So they're going to keep calling until they're able to speak. They're just feeling you out. Because we can tell in the energy when someone's calling just to say, hey, I just wanted to connect with you, versus I'm going to feel you out, and then because I'm looking for something. I'm going to feel you out. I'm going to find out what I need to find out, and then I'm going to direct some energy. So let's say you and the person have connected, and then this third person comes and they pick up the phone and they're feeling you out. We have to determine in our minds when that happens, when we feel that someone's feeling us out, we have to determine in our minds first that we're going to think good thoughts about them feeling us out in that phone conversation. If we can even change that energy, they might have called to say something negative about the other person that we've connected with so that they can interrupt the energy flow. But if we first think good thoughts about them and say to ourselves, no matter what, we're going to think positive thoughts about whatever they're feeling us out for. Whatever they're attempting to do, we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and we're going to think good thoughts about them. And then by the time they drop that bomb about the third person, it won't even hit the target. They'll attempt to go in the direction of talking about that person to you in order to interrupt the connection that you have with that person. But you're so positive, and you put so much positive energy into the flow that they can't, number one, interrupt your connection with your brother or sister whom you've connected with beautifully in the group or in the nation or in the government. You've connected so beautifully that there's nothing they can say or do that will break that connection. And not only that, because you gave them the benefit of the doubt, and you thought positively about them even though their energies might have been a little nefarious, then your connection with them is not broken, nor were they able to poison you against your brother or sister or interrupt the energy flow between you and your brother or sister. Okay? So thinking positively about them, giving them the benefit of the doubt, and then whenever they, there's an attempt to do whatever it is, talk about that, discuss the brother or sister, or interrupt the energy, we stay in the flow of thinking positively about them and saying, yes, we're better than all of that. We're better than all of that. Then it will neutralize any negative energy, because some people do that unknowingly because they're guided by their feelings. Instead of them being in control of their feelings are in control of them. So they may not know that that's where they're going and what they're doing. That's why we give everyone the benefit of the doubt and keep thinking positive thoughts about them. And then that neutralizes any negativity that could interrupt the unity in our nation. And then we maintain the connection that we have with our brother or sister on both sides. I like that we're able to do that. We are energy controllers, currency controllers. That's the real currency in our nation. And the reason that's the real currency is as we move into commerce with one another, we will have already established relationships. And dare I say intercourse from a spiritual perspective, because that's really what commerce is, it's intercourse. That's what it's called in the law. So when you look at the old hieroglyphs that are out there, and you see something that says that the ancients were involved in bestiality, it's because we had intercourse with corporate, commercial intercourse with corporate. And some had actual intercourse with corporate. And by actual, I mean it manifested in the physical. That cannot be. That is bestiality, because they are not us. There is man, which is us, and there's beast. It's all about currency. Those two don't mix. They don't mix. They don't go together because we're not on the same system. They use fiat and we use gold and silver. And if there's corporate intercourse, that means someone's not using what they should naturally be using in order to engage. That means something unnatural is going on. That means something unnatural is going on. Corporates can't use gold and silver. No matter how they talk about it being on the stock market, it was paper they were talking about. It's not anything real. And sovereigns use gold and silver. It's unnatural for us to even be on a fiat system because we back everything anyway. That's why it felt unnatural. That's unnatural commercial intercourse. That's why it felt. And that's why we couldn't accomplish anything that we wanted to accomplish with all of this knowledge and intellect. We are the most intelligent in the universe. So much so that we had to consent to the fall. That's not something that snuck up on us and caught us unawares. And today, all we're saying is we're not going to consent to that energy flow anymore. We're going to interrupt the commercial energy flow with gold and silver. When we began to circulate liens all over the place, that interrupted, that was the precursor for them. The curse before the end of that commercial piece. We cursed that corporate commerce because gold and silver documents were flowing, lawful affidavits all over the place, interrupting energy flows. Interrupting energy flows. That's what happened. And then we followed that up with court actions that interrupted further energy flows. And now we're interrupting the energy flow of fake policy enforcers because the real law has shown up. We're here. So in all the territories, we are the law. We are now interrupting that energy flow by putting it out on the public record that we're the law, and that when events take place in our Moorish nation and our government, we handle it within and not without. That's huge. That is huge for our nation. You've seen how on those fake reservations, how many of them had their own police and their own courts and things like that, their own policy enforcers and their own courts, corporate courts at that. And if you look there today, you will see that they are re-engaged fully with the corporates, and the corporates are removing them all off of those places, and those places are not what they used to be. Those, their state courts are no longer separate from, they don't even give them the appearance of being separate. And if you go on to those reservations, and that's really just a corporate term, it doesn't really, there's really no separation of the land. But when, in terms of the corporate, those who were doing business as Native Americans, they're fully engaged with the Albion corporate system. And in many cases, there are Albions who are claiming to be chiefs. And the policy enforcers come and go. Corporate policy enforcers come and go at will. And their courts are speaking directly to the other corporate courts. And they're doing business back and forth and shuffling and trafficking the Native Americans, trafficking them back and forth. The courts that are quote unquote on the reservation are sending people out to the fake corporate courts when things, they do an even exchange. That's how you know that they're just as corporate as the corporates are. That is intercourse for them. That's corporate intercourse. That's corporate intercourse. Whereas our courts we don't have corporate intercourse. We just speak and put them where they belong, and they know that it's not intercourse because they know not to speak and not to say a word about our court action. You mean to tell me this many Moors can do court actions and it not be on the news? Not even one? No, not. There is no intercourse. We don't do bestiality. It's energy flows. And corporate energy and ancient, sovereign, Akashic, natural, divine, Moorish American energy do not flow in the same conveyance method. And they don't even flow at the same time. So, energy, energy, energy. Everything is energy. That is why our energy has to stay at a particular frequency. War energy interrupts the peace. And because peace is one of the 5 points of light, that's war energy is not sovereign. Again, if we were to war, we would destroy everything. We're too powerful for that. We must be peace. We must be peace. War energy is even confronting Albion energies, foreign Albion energies. We don't have to confront them. All we have to do is speak by affidavit and just watch. Speak and just watch. That's why we don't go into, to go talk to them somewhere and pick up the phone and call them. We don't do any of that. We speak, we notify competently and peacefully, and then we go on about our business. We keep it moving. That's all the liens did, was notify them that it's over. Really. They were a lien alien in the first place. They are a corruption in the first place. That's why the bibliotheca talks about the corruptible putting on incorruptible in that day. That means that we were going to wake up and stop the corruption. When the Albions talk about corruption in Washington, D.C., they're talking about corruption of that which is natural. They don't have any, they're not going to change. None of them. They're all corrupt. They were born in corruption. They were born corrupt. We are incorruptible. And we're actually putting on incorruptible as we go. It's impossible to corrupt our bloodline. No matter who the matriarch is with, they are us. If they come from sovereign womb, they're sovereign. And if they come from any womb that's not us, they're not sovereign. And there's only two kinds of that. Either you're natural or you're not natural. You're corporate. corporate. Corporate is the corruption. So corruption and interruption have the same root word. And that root word is a derivative of rupture, to break. So even when you look at the etymology of corruption and energy interruption, or a rupture, ruptures can be good or bad. When the placenta ruptures, the sac that's carrying the baby in the womb ruptures at 9 months when the baby is ready to come out, that's a good rupture. The baby's not going to be in water anymore, not underwater, but in water. The baby's not going to be in water anymore. The baby's going to breathe air and has decided to join us here. And when the baby decides to join us here, the water sac is ruptured. That's a good rupture. That's a good interruption. The way we start out in water should tell us that we should be as close to that as possible out here, in terms of hydration. Because that's when baby is most alkaline. Alkaline. The acidity comes once the baby gets out here, or if mother is acidic. So again, acid interrupts the flow of alkaline energies. Acidic energies interrupt the flow of alkaline energies. And we already know that cancer and things like that, dis-ease, they call it dis-ease because there's a high amount of acidity that has been brought into manifestation, that is present. But when that acidity goes back to alkalinity and we're more alkaline, then everything for us gets better. We live longer, we're healthier. If you want to turn back the clock, drink more water, and instead of taking showers, take baths, and be in water as often as possible. Baby is example of that. The baby in the mother's womb. The womb is the example of that. The womb is the proof of that. That's why the baby, when the baby comes out, and at first the baby's a little wrinkly, but the skin just smooths out because it's hydrated. And then guess what? The corporates say, don't give the baby water, give the baby formula. Don't give the baby breast milk because it's alkaline. That's what they will say. That's what the corporates say. Give them infamil. And we're going to throw a bunch of acidic crap in the infamil and in the formula to corrupt and interrupt and rupture the cells. But the same alkalinity that's in the womb is in the breast milk. That's why we want to keep the baby alkaline as long as possible. and natural as long as possible. Same thing with us, more. Drinking more water, 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 water. The reason why Coca-Cola made so much money, or fiat rather, the reason why they made so much fiat and became such a worldwide whatever, sensation or whatever, is because we agreed to drink it instead of drinking water. Now, I'm not knocking anybody who drinks soda. I'm not knocking anybody who drinks soda. I like soda. But I know that water is better for me than soda. And since I'm coming out of captivity, and captivity happens in the mind, we know that. They were never strong enough to capture us. We had to consent to it. Those are things that we are slowly but surely getting away from. Slowly but surely getting away from. So we shouldn't beat ourselves up over anything close to any of that. Some of us still eat meat. Some still drink sodas. We are coming away from that. Our goal is to get away from it. And when we do erudition teaching and learning about energy and the interruption thereof and things that interrupt our energy, over time we will get away from it. Some have been able to get away from it altogether. Others of us, it's a slower process. It's a process nonetheless. We don't stop just because we didn't get away from the things, whatever those things that kept us in captivity are. We don't stop moving forward. And that's another thing about the interruption of energy. Is there are things that we were doing or that we ate or drank or whatever it is in captivity that interrupted, they contributed to the interruption of Akashic records and answers being given to us. And the reason that's the reason why those things were put before us so easily. In the POW schools, what did they give the children? Cow's milk instead of water at lunchtime. Cow's milk instead of water. Thankfully, our cellular makeup is such that it does not take us long to recover. Thankfully, we are fearfully and wonderfully made that it did not take us long to recover from all of that. And that's what we're doing now, is slowly coming out of that, recovering, and continuing the grand rising. It all starts with energy flow, and it stops with interruption of the energy flow. And as soon as and it can't stop really. All we have to do is get past the interruption and then learn how to use energy interruption to our advantage. That's the key to everything that we say, do, know, feel, all of that, is that there's nothing that's really good or bad. It's how you use it. Nothing that's really good or bad in our nation. Energy interruption is good when you think about what we've done. We've interrupted the corporate flow. So energy interruption is a warrior's weapon of peace. But then we have to know when it's being done to us too, when there's an attempt to interrupt our energies as well. And when we realized that that was an attempt to interrupt the flow of energies between us, brothers and sisters. So when you're approached by anyone, no matter who it is, or when you're listening to something, no matter what it is, always let your first thought be, what will this do, or what is this doing to my energy flow and my ancient Akashic connection? What can I gain from this in terms of growth? Or is my energy, is my peace disturbed by it? And again, even disturbing peace has its advantages. For us, disturbing peace was, some of us were pretty comfortable in that corporate environment. But we needed to come out of it so that it would not implode on us like it's doing on the corporate. So we needed our peace disturbed because it was a false peace. It was a corporate representation of peace. And so we traded that in for the real peace, which is us. Anytime you hear anything, anyone talking, any noise, any music, anytime you hear anything, the first thought is, which one of my superpowers do I need to use on what I'm hearing? Do I need to interrupt the energy by silencing that? Or do I need to be more open in terms of causing the energy to flow more? Can I feed the energy so that it grows? Is this some energy I want to feed? You know, when they say misery loves company, so does intelligence. So does sovereign authority. Sovereign authority loves company. The law and the government only grows at our consent for it to grow. And you will know even before the noise starts, or the speaking starts, or the music starts, or before the arrival happens. If the feeling that you get is fear, then it is definitely worth looking at. Because fear can be, we can interrupt that energy. And in fact, we do interrupt that energy. That's why we're here. We've interrupted the fear energy. We interrupt the energy, and then we also allow our sovereign energy to continue to flow regardless of those attempts to interrupt it. So, having said that, we're going to pause here, and that's why I say pause, because our energy is going to continue to flow. We're just pausing the call. We'll have another, our Thursday call is going to continue as well, because that's an energy flow also. Continuing to come together and speak with each other and meet with each other, that's a flow. And we want to keep that flow going, because all energies right now that we put forth that are in alignment with our ancestral Akashic records and the energy that comes with those records is being magnified right now, because we made it through So we made it through the retrograde. We made it through that gigantic turning off of that corporate energy that happened around the 8th or 9th of October. It was actually the 9th, the morning of the 9th. We made it through that. And our energies and our unity is still flowing. So all we have to do is continue. If we can make it through that and through the things that we've made it through thus far, we can make it through anything. That was the hardest part is over. Now we just have to continue doing what we did to get past all of that. Connect, stay connected, keep the energy flow in our nation. We're unstoppable. So with that, we're going to pause here and we will meet again tomorrow at 7 on Thursdays and that's 7 Eastern on Thursdays and 6 Eastern on Sundays. Peace and grand rising to the air.
Grand rising.
Peace and grand rising to the Moors.
Thank you, Empress. Peace and grand rising to the air.
Peace and love.
Grand Rising, Moors. Peace and love.
Islam.